Hi, it's Emily, back for another week to talk to you about music and singing. This is week 10, and it will be my final video with you this year. In this last video, we're going to look at some music from one of the most famous operas, Giacomo Puccini's La Boheme. The San Diego Opera actually did a drive-in movie-style production of La Boheme this fall. We'll start by looking at the music to see what information we can find, then we'll listen to it, and we'll even try singing the first few words. Let me start by telling you a little bit about the story and the characters. La Boheme is a story about friends, love, artists, and losing someone. The story starts with a group of friends who are all different type of artists who live together. They don't have much money. After some of the friends leave to go to a cafe, Rodolfo the poet is left behind to finish up something he was working on. His neighbor, a seamstress named Mimi, comes knocking on the door because her candle has gone out and she's hoping that he will light it for her. The connection is instant. You know they've fallen for each other. Mimi and Rodolfo leave to meet the other friends at the cafe. Once they get to the cafe, the ex-girlfriend of one of the other friends shows up and sings a song about how much attention she gets from other people to make Marcello, her ex-boyfriend, very jealous. That's the piece we're going to look at today. Over winter, Mimi unfortunately gets very sick. Rodolfo is worried that because they don't have much money, he won't be able to take care of her. Eventually, they do break up. A few months later, Mimi, who has now gotten to be very, very ill, comes looking for Rodolfo. The friends see how bad she is, and they offer to sell some things that they own to try to get enough money for medicine for her. Unfortunately, it's too late. The friends do everything they can to make Mimi comfortable. Mimi and Rodolfo sing together about the first time they met, and they remember their happy times together. In the end, Mimi dies. The story is very sad, but there are also funny parts, and in the end, it is a story about the power of love and friendship. I think you can see why it's been so popular. In opera, when a character sings a song all by themselves, we call that an aria. We are going to look at the beginning of the aria that Mosetas sings to Marcello to make him jealous in the cafe. She sings about how much attention she gets on the street and how popular she is with other people. Let's start by looking at a picture of the music, and then we'll talk a little bit about the words. You probably noticed in that picture that I highlighted and circled parts of the music. Those are all the things we've gone over in the last 10 weeks. Isn't it amazing how many things we've talked about? Hopefully some of them look familiar. Let's go over them one by one and see what information you can tell me about the music. Let's start by looking at this yellow circle here. You can go back and look at your picture if that's helpful. See this number that I've circled? Do you remember what that number tells us? I'll give you a second to think about it. Did you remember that this yellow circled number here, 104, that's the tempo marking for our song. Maybe you'll remember in our video, I called it the speed limit, and I used this tool, my metronome, to tell me what 104 beats per minute sounded like. Listen. That's 104 beats per minute. We know that when we tap that beat, that's how fast our song should go. Next, let's look at these 5 lines right here. There's also 5 down here. I'll give you a minute. Do you remember what those 5 lines are called? Those 5 lines make up the musical staff. Now, what about these 2 symbols on the staff that I highlighted in yellow? Again, you can always go back to your music or the picture I showed earlier to spend some more time looking at it. What about these two symbols on the top of the staff and at the lower staff? Do you remember what those are called? These two symbols, highlighted in yellow, are the treble clef and the bass clef. Remember I said that women usually sing on the treble clef and men usually sing on the bass clef. It's not always true, but usually. Do you remember what it's called when we put the two staffs together, the staff with the treble clef and the staff with the bass clef? It's grande. It's the grand staff. Take a look at the picture again. Do you remember what these symbols, highlighted in green, that look like the hashtag are called? These symbols that look like the hashtag are called sharps. Now, do you remember what information we can find by looking at whether there are sharps or flats at the beginning of a piece of music? Sharps or flats at the beginning of a piece of music tell us what key a piece of music is in. We didn't talk about how to know which key it is based on how many sharps or flats you find at the beginning of a piece of music, but I can tell you that this piece, this aria from La Boheme, is in the key of E major. We did talk a little bit about how composers might use certain keys because they remind them of certain emotions or even certain colors. The key of E major is said to be a loud, boisterous, laughing key, or could even mean incomplete love. Maybe it makes sense that Puccini chose the key of E major for this aria that's all about flirtation and getting attention from her ex-boyfriend. Take a look at the music again. Do you remember what all these little black circles on the lines of the staff are called? Yep, that's a pretty easy one. They're called notes. Do you remember some parts of a note? I'll let you think about it for a second. Attached to a note can be a stem, a flag, or a dot. Here in this music, there are a lot of notes that have stems and flags. Let's look at the picture again. What about these lines? I've put a brown line there. These lines that divide the staff up into smaller pieces. Do you remember what those smaller pieces are called? Just like with our tape measure, those lines divide our staff up into smaller pieces that we call measures. Let's look at your picture again. What about right here in pink? This 3 and this 4 that I've highlighted in pink. Do you remember what that 3, that top number, tells us? That top number, highlighted in pink, the 3 over the 4, tells us how many beats per measure we're going to feel in the piece. Okay, here's the last one. Look at the picture again. Look at this group of notes that I've circled in blue. Do you remember what it's called when notes are stacked up and played at the same time? The notes that I circled in blue that are stacked up are called a chord. If you remember, I said that a chord supports the melody and leads our ear through the music. I know there are probably lots of other things you noticed when you were looking at the music, but think of how many things you've learned in just the last few weeks that now help you find information on music. It's kind of like learning another language. All of these symbols help us to eventually communicate better through the music that we want to share. Sometimes people call this aria, this piece that we're going to listen to, Mosetas Waltz. Do you remember a video a couple weeks ago? I talked about dance rhythms and how different dances have a different number of beats per measure. Well, the waltz has 3 beats per measure. So how many beats per measure do you think this piece has? 3. Mosetas Waltz has 3 beats per measure. Let's listen and see if you can feel those 3 beats. Let's see if you can hear the 3 beats per measure in Mosetas Waltz. I'll try showing you the beats using a conductor's beat pattern. In this style of music, sometimes we stretch certain beats to make them a little longer and shrink other beats to show the emotion of the piece, so it can really help to have a conductor. Listen and see if you can hear and see the 3 beats per measure. One, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now, let's try singing part of it together. The first line is Quando me vo saletta per la via, la gente sosta e mira. It's in Italian. It might sound a little bit like Spanish. In English, that first line means, when I go walking down the street alone, people stop and stare at me. We're only going to try singing the first 3 words, which are Quando me vo. I'll show you on the screen. Quando me vo. Do you remember some of the things we talked about when we talked about being ready to sing, about breathing, and about standing up? See if you can try to remember a couple of the things we talked about. 2 of the things we talked about were taking a good breath that lets our body move the way it should move for breathing and lets our lungs fill all the way up. The other important thing we talked about was standing with good alignment, right? Being balanced and ready to sing. Having our ears over our shoulders, over our waist, over our hips, over our knees, and over our ankles. So before we start singing, take a few deep breaths that let your ribs move and your lungs fill up, and think about lining your body up so that you're balanced and ready to sing. Let's try speaking our first 3 words in the right rhythm before we sing them. Remember our words? Quando me vo. That means whenever I walk. Now, one more time. Quando me vo. And the rhythm, the beat that we're going to sing to, let's say is about like this. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Remember our sentence, a very big bear stole my lunch, and how we played around with the rhythm? Let's do the same thing with Quando me vo and put it to our beats. I'll do it once for you. Quando me vo. Try that with me. Maybe you can even clap. Quando me vo. One more time. Quando me vo. Now, let's try singing that same rhythm with the right notes. Now, in Quando me vo, Mosetas sings up here. But we can also sing it down an octave, if that's more comfortable. I'll sing it down here with you. Let's try putting our words with those notes. The shape we're going to be singing is that slide shape. All the notes are going down. It's like a little scale, a group of notes all going down. Let's try singing Quando me vo on those notes. All right, let's line ourselves up. We're balanced. Let's take a good breath that lets our whole body move. And now sing these notes with me. I'll even tap the beat. Quando me vo. Let's try again. Quando me vo. Now, I'm going to play the whole accompaniment again, and we can sing it just like as if we were in the opera. Okay, ready? Remember, here are your notes. Quando me vo. I'm gonna start the accompaniment. I'll even bring you in. Let's sing Quando me vo together. Breathe. Quando me vo. Great job. Thank you so much for joining me over the last 10 weeks. The more time you spend with music, the more you'll start to notice about how music works, and you'll discover all the different kinds of music there are to learn about and love, including opera. I hope that sometime I'll be able to be in San Diego and meet you in person and maybe even sing for you. Whatever kind of music you like, I encourage you to listen to it, learn about it, and then go share it. Because after all, music is meant to be shared. Until next time, bye.